Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's webinar. Today's webinar is being provided through the two regional growth hubs. So before we dive headlong into the session, I'd like to invite Cami from the Northeast Left to say a few words about the support they have available.
Thank you very much. Briefly, the Northeast Left are here to assist SMEs in the Northeast area, ranging from Cumbria up to just below Tees Valley to Newton Aycliffe area. We're engaged in various areas of sectors as well at the moment in terms of support in digital, energy, manufacturing, health and life science as well as general support for businesses and signposting them to other stakeholders that we work alongside with as well. We're also engaging in various studies at the moment in the BME sector as well, in terms of supports for ethnic communities in the Northeast as well. So that's underway as well. But generally, overall, we're looking to work with businesses right across the sectors and helping them through the minefields that normally exist for businesses. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks so much, Cami. Just a few words about the Tees Valley business and Tees Valley Combined Authority part. Very similar to the Northeast Left. Tees Valley business is actually the local growth hub for Tees Valley and is part of the Combined Authority. It helps businesses realise growth potential, offering access to a range of practical services from local business information, accessing growth options, unlocking finance and funding streams. The growth hub's part funded by the European Regional Development Fund and the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. Just briefly, Tees Valley Business can help with anything, basically, from starting up a new business to developing your workforce, accessing finance and grants, developing your growth strategy, or even just finding the right location for your business, as well as support with product development, sales and marketing. On the screen there, you'll see the contact details for both the Northeast Left and the Tees Valley Business Growth Hub. We will provide those details at the end of the webinar as well. But without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Ben Bradford, who will take you through today's presentation. Thanks a lot, Ben.
Thank you very much, Tracy, and good morning, everyone. Like Tracy mentioned, today we're looking at some of the important changes which came into effect on the 1st of January 2022 and will have had some impact on your business. So, as mentioned on the previous slide, we'll be looking at the requirement to complete a full import declaration, changes to the Harmonised system, which affects your commodity codes, changes in how you comply with the rules of origin, and finally, the requirement to complete a pre-notification via IPAFFS for particular goods. Now, important to quickly note that these were not the only changes which were introduced on the 1st of January. You know, for example, you might have heard in the news about the introduction of the Goods Vehicle Movement System, GVMS, and the requirement for a GMR. However, these affect hauliers more than businesses. So as such, all we're trying to do today is really focus our time on the changes that are going to have the biggest impact on you, local businesses. But it is worth just remembering that this isn't everything today that has changed from the 1st of January. And I think it's also important just to realise and appreciate that these changes are coming about due to a couple of different reasons. Probably the biggest reason for these changes, and the one that's talked about the most, is Brexit, is the UK-EU Trade and Cooperation Agreement, the TCA. So when we left the EU Customs Union, it had a massive impact on the UK businesses who trade with the EU. So to help businesses prepare for these changes and to ensure that the goods continue to move, particularly during 2021, the UK government introduced grace periods to allow businesses to prepare and become accustomed to the new rules. So for a lot of these easements, the 1st of January 2022 symbolises their expiry date. So these easements have now gone, and what we're left with is the new norm. And I can't stress it is the new norm, and that is what we are discussing today. And then on top of that, and totally separate to the UK-EU TCA, the World Customs Organization have introduced changes which will affect businesses' commodity codes. Now, these are global changes. It's away from Brexit, away from the UK and the EU, but they are just as important to understand and familiarize yourself with. So, our first topic today, and one which relates to the end of an easement period, is the requirement to complete full import declarations on goods which derive from the EU. So, how is this different from 2021? Well, throughout 2021, businesses have had the ability to provide a supplementary declaration up to 175 days after the goods were actually imported. So in terms of the business's requirements when the goods arrived in GB, they either had to provide a simplified declaration or simply make an entry in their own records. And this really gave businesses the time to pull the required information together and the flexibility of completing the supplementary declaration at a time which suited them, obviously within that 175-day period. However, that 175-day grace period, that's now gone. A full import declaration needs to be completed when the goods are imported into the UK. So for businesses, that means that you've now got to prepare in advance. That flexibility we had, that's no longer there. So to help you prepare and help you understand what you need to do, we need to think about what that actually means and what impact it's going to have on your business. So can't stress that full import declaration needs to be completed before the goods pass through UK border. So the exact timing of when the import declaration needs to be made will depend on the haulier and the system which is being used in the UK port. Now, there have been situations already since the 1st of January where hauliers are requesting the GB import declaration to be submitted before they even pick up the goods in the EU from the exporter's warehouse. Now, hopefully, this is just hauliers being cautious while they get used to and familiar with the new rules. But I suppose it just highlights the need to be organised, be prepared, and do the import declaration in advance. So to do this, you'll need to decide who is going to complete the import formalities on your behalf. Are you using a freight forwarder, a customs intermediary, or a courier? Maybe you've got the software and skills to complete the import requirements in-house. I think either way, you need to ensure that you've decided who will do them for you well in advance. Because it's important that both you and the party completing your import declaration know the type of goods you are importing, because this can affect the information which you need or whether any additional restrictions apply. So you've got to ensure that you know the information that is required from you and make that information available to the intermediary. And at the end of the day, and this is something which probably touch on a lot during this webinar, it comes down to preparation and organisation. Now, if you don't want to complete full import declarations prior to the goods entering Great Britain, there is still an alternative. Okay, the principle of completing a simplified declaration or using EIDR at the border before completing a supplementary declaration, in principle, that is still there, but there are two key differences. Okay, first, that easement now, that is not open to everybody. Okay, you do need approval to use this easement. You do need a duty deferment account. Okay, and secondly, whereas in 2021 that easement gave businesses 175 days to provide the supplementary declaration, now even with this approval and the duty deferment account, you get until the 4th working day of the following month. Okay, so 2 key points there. If you want to go down this route, that's fine, but you have to make sure that you've got the approval to do so. Okay, and even after the approval, you still don't have the full 175 days, which people have got used to during 2021. Now, if you think this is a route you want to go down, then I'd probably argue that the best people to speak to would be a customs intermediary, or maybe one of your growth hub teams if they have an international trade team there. Because I am aware of some customs intermediaries who are actually helping businesses to get the authorization and get set up so they can continue to complete supplementary declarations, and they'll do that on your behalf. So if your customs intermediary or your growth hub would be a good place to start for you. So quickly, but I think very importantly, we do need to know that there is an exemption to this new rule. The government has announced that you can continue to delay declarations for up to 175 days if you move goods which aren't controlled and are in free circulation from the island of Ireland. So we're talking about Northern Ireland here and Republic of Ireland. So it is worth noting that this easement is currently open-ended. There is no end date, but that doesn't mean it'll last forever. So if this applies to you, you really need to keep an eye on it to ensure that when the time comes, you are prepared to start completing full import declarations. So moving on from import declaration requirements, let's look at the changes to the harmonised system, which were also introduced on the 1st of January. So these changes, they were introduced by the World Customs Organization, the WCO. They go beyond the UK and the EU. They are global changes, so they are something for all businesses who trade internationally to consider and prepare for. So firstly, I just want to fly through this and ensure that everyone understands what we mean when we say harmonised system, because I hope most people now have got used to the idea of commodity codes and hopefully understand how they slightly differ in each customs territory. But what the harmonised system does is it ensures that all countries and customs territories use the same first 6 digits to identify a particular good. So, for example, it would be extremely difficult if the 10-digit code for a tennis ball was totally different in every country. But by having the harmonised system, it ensures that the first 6 digits of that tennis ball will be the same globally. And by globally, really do mean the harmonised system is used in every corner of the globe. Roughly 200 countries, which account for over 98% of world trade, use the harmonised system. So in all likelihood, if you trade internationally, the harmonised system is going to affect you, your supplier, and or your customer as well. So it's really important that we understand these changes. So quickly, just to hammer home here, we'll quickly go through an example. So the UK trade tariff identifies the correct commodity code for a dishwasher as 8422110000. So 84 is the chapter, 22 is the heading, and 11 is the subheading. And those 6 digits is what we mean by the harmonised system. So whether you're importing that product into the UK, Spain, Canada, Australia, Japan, wherever those first 6 digits, the chapter, the heading and the subheading, will be the same. But I think going back to what we're really here to discuss, it is the harmonised system being updated. And that's what it is. I don't want people to think that this is kind of change for the sake of change. It is an update, and this happens roughly every 5 years. So it's not new, it's not totally unexpected. And I think the main reason for updating the harmonised system is to ensure that it continues to reflect the developments and changes in products and technology. So for example, the 1st of January saw the introduction of the harmonised system code specific to drones. It saw electric vehicles gaining their own classification. So like I said, it is an update based on technology and products rather than just a change for the sake of it. In total, the WCO explained that there were 351 set of amendments with changes to chapters ranging from chapter 2 to chapter 97. So there's been a whole host of changes covering a wide range of products. So as such, it's imperative that you check to see whether your product and your commodity code has been affected. Because if your commodity code has changed, then this may have had multiple knock-on effects on your business, and I think this is so important to appreciate. For example, it is possible that the duty rate may have changed, so it could now be lower, it could now be higher, but that could have a real financial impact on your business. Maybe there's been a change to the importing restrictions or regulations which apply to your goods. So it might be that you now need a different license, or a new restriction may apply. So you need to obviously be aware of that before you try and move any products. And I think regardless of these changes, so it might be that duty rate's the same restrictions or regulations apply. If you provide customs with the wrong commodity code, even if that commodity code was appropriate as recently as the 31st of December, you run the serious risk of having your goods delayed at customs. And delays really mean two things. Delays means additional costs, and it can put strains on your business relationships. So whether that's your relationship with your customs intermediary or your relationship with your supplier or customer. So it's vital that you prepare and you get this right before you try and move any goods. So how do you go about checking that you are using the right commodity code? Well, there are a couple of different ways which you can check. The top link will take you to the WCO website, which where they've outlined the different changes that have been introduced. Alternatively, you could use the UK trade tariff to find the applicable changes and the full UK commodity code for your product. And they have now included a new tab at the top which says updates, and it's listed all the updates there. So your commodity code might not have changed, but it is really important that you check and make sure that that is the case before you move your products. So moving on to our third change now, which is all about compliance and the rules of origin. So businesses, I think now, hopefully have all got used to the term rules of origin and the financial benefits of using the preferential tariff rate. To date, to claim origin under the UK-EU TCA, businesses have either had to rely on a statement on origin or use importer's knowledge. Now, simply relying on one or the other would suffice if in your goods being cleared by customs without any customs duty being paid. However, since the 1st of January, there has been a change in approach. So customs authorities no longer simply ask, are you providing a statement on origin, or are you using importers' knowledge? They now ask the question, can you prove that your goods meet the preferential tariff rate? And this is the big question, because businesses now need to ensure that their goods are compliant with the rules of origin, and that they have the evidence and proof to support that claim before they move the goods, before the goods reach customs, because it will be at customs where they may ask that question. So here is an example of some of the proof and evidence which you may want to obtain to ensure that your goods meet the rules of origin and that you are compliant. And these are only examples, okay, because it'll depend on your product, it'll depend on the product specific rules, it'll depend on the processing and manufacturing that your products undergo, and that will all determine the type of evidence which is right for you to keep, which is suitable for your product. But if we just run through these, I think supplier's declaration is probably the one which most people are familiar with or heard about the most, and we'll talk about a bit more on the next slide. But briefly, what that does is it provides information from the supplier concerning the originating status of those goods. Okay, maybe you're going to rely on an invoice. So an invoice might list the goods sent and with a statement of the sum due. You could use accounting details. So again, that might show the details of the transaction of the goods and the financial value of them. It might be that you rely on production records. So whether that's official certificates, or you might have comprehensive handwritten records about the production that either you undertake or the manufacturer, your supplier, undertakes. That's just a few examples of different ideas of the evidence that you might want to obtain. So like I said, let's have a look at suppliers' declarations a bit more and what they actually are. Well, if we look at the prescribed form from the UK EU TCA, you'll see that you can rely on a suppliers' declaration or a long-term suppliers' declaration. So the first option is ideal when you are dealing with a customer, maybe on an ad hoc basis, whereas a long-term declaration might be ideal for a situation where a supplier consistently moves goods to the same customer, and those goods, when manufactured, undergo a consistent process. Okay, and the supplier's declaration is normally valid for a period of up to 2 years from the date of being made out. So that could be a real option for you if you fit those criteria, I suppose, which I just ran through. So I think depending on where you fit on the supply chain, it may be that you provide a supplier's declaration to your customer to show the originating status of your product, or you might be requesting a supplier's declaration from your supplier to show the originating status of the products or the raw materials that you purchase from them. And again, I think it's important to note, while we're talking about compliance here and building on that idea, that if you make out a supplier's declaration, you are required that, or it is an option that customs can come to you and ask for the evidence or proof of the information which you've set out in that supplier's declaration. Okay, so again, can't just complete one of these forms for the sake of it and think that we've ticked a box that we need to tick. We need to make sure that if we're producing things like supplier's declarations, we have the evidence, if needs be, to show that what we are doing and the preferential tariff rate which we're claiming is correct. Okay, and that's vital, and I think it goes back to that idea of being organised and being prepared. So look at the product specific rule, which is relevant for your product to gain preferential tariff rate. Then look at your product and the manufacturing or the processes which is undertaken, and then really think, what evidence do you need to keep in order to support that claim for a preferential tariff rate? And the final change which we are discussing today is the new requirement to complete a pre-notification via IPAFFS. So what is IPAFFS? Because like Tracy said at the beginning, it won't be relevant for all of you watching. Well, I think to give it its full name, it is the Import of Product, Animals, Food and Feed System. And to answer the question of who does IPAFFS relate to, we have these 4 bullet points. So importers of products of animal origin, POAO, importers of animal byproducts, ABP, importers of high-risk food and feed not of animal origin, so HRFNAO, and finally importers of all plants and plant products categorized as regulated and notifiable. And if you fall under this point or under the 4th bullet point, just quickly note you can continue to notify via the Peach system if you already use Peach. Otherwise, you'll need to create an account on IPAFFS. And while we're talking about the Peach system, it is being phased out. So if your business at the moment currently uses Peach, just keep in the back of your mind that at some point you will be required to switch over to IPAFFS. So we've mentioned that you'll need to complete a pre-notification on IPAFFS, but what does that actually entail? What does that include? Well, in order to complete the pre-notification, you will need to know the type of animal product you're importing. So is it POAO, ABP, etc.? The origin of the animal product, the commodity code, the commodity type, the species of the commodity, the commodity weight, the date of arrival into GB, the reason for importing, so is it for commercial use, testing, etc. Consignment, place of destination, the addresses and contact details for the place of origin, the importer and place of destination, and finally details of the port of entry. Now, I appreciate that might seem like a fairly long list, but IPAFFS, I think, is another example where it is imperative that you have a good line of communication with your suppliers. Remember that currently the requirement for your supplier to provide an export health certificate, that's actually been phased in from July 2022. So for the time being, it's simply the pre-notification, and this is the type of information which you need to gather. So just a quick little checklist here of how business should go about completing their IPAFFS commitments if they are relevant to them. Firstly, strongly advise a business to register to use IPAFFS as soon as possible. I wouldn't recommend waiting until you need to complete your first pre-notification. Get it done, and then you've ticked that off. In order to register for IPAFFS, you do need to have a government gateway account and DEFRA account. Okay, then the pre-notification will need to be completed at least 4 hours in advance of the goods arriving into GB. And quickly, this 4-hour benchmark is something else which I would recommend you closely monitor, as it is currently due to be extended to 24 hours in advance from July this year. And then finally, once you complete the pre-notification on IPAFFS or Peach, the notification reference number will need to be included on the import declaration. Okay, so hopefully that helps there maybe tie this into the first point we talk about the completion of full import declarations and understanding whether you need customs intermediary or not, and understanding the type of information that you need to give that customs intermediary. Again and again, very important, same as what mentioned earlier. For the island of Ireland, the pre-notification requirement for IPAFFS, that hasn't come into force yet. The easement is continuing. Again, it's open-ended. So again, if this applies to you, I'd certainly keep an eye out and monitor the Gov website, because at some point you will be required to use IPAFFS.
If you have any further questions at all, as I mentioned, either in relation to what we've discussed today or international trade more broadly, or maybe you'd just like to know more about what your Growth Hub can do for you, what support's available, then the contacts are available there on the screen now. Just to mention, we've got a couple of other webinars coming up in the next few weeks. Again, they'll just be around about 30-minute presentation, just covering the highlights, but with an opportunity to ask questions. 3rd of February at 11 o'clock again will be Incoterms for sales teams. Is getting it wrong costing you money? This is a really, really useful one, and one that that is overlooked an awful lot, because it's important that your sales teams understand your Incoterms, because they get it wrong and it's too late to change it once you've got it in that contract. And the next one is on the 17th of February, same time, 11 o'clock. Looking beyond Europe, the rest of the world trade agreement opportunities. So now that we've left the EU, you may want to look at what opportunities we've got for free trade or preferential trade with other countries and how they're building up. So that's a really, really useful insight to what's in place now and what's coming up. So yeah, thank you everyone, and please don't hesitate to get in touch if you have any more queries. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day, and then all that's to say is goodbye and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for coming. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.